Welcome to today's tutorial on the introduction to the FlexBuilder Profiler tool. We'll be taking a quick look at the profiler and focusing our attention on its memory usage tab and how we can manage and increase our Swift's overall performance. This becomes a very beneficial tool when we're making Flash applications or Flex applications when we have a lot of things going on in the back end and maybe the user is seeing some slow performance. This allows us to go back in and run the application and take a look at the performance and see peaks and valleys of where things are happening, functions are being called, and where we can actually increase our performance at those areas. So let me open up the application here. I made a quick ActionScript example, and let me go ahead and run it and I'll show what's going on. So I have a 5x4 grid here of rectangles. And each of these rectangles gets put in place using two for loops and runs through. And what makes them unique is each square gets their own random color assigned to them, and based on the code that I've written. Another kind of exciting thing that's going on here is when you click on one of these squares, a new square gets added on top of it as a different color. So each of these squares I click on, they keep adding different colors on top of them, which is kind of cool. And to showcase the performance issue that's going on here, let me close that. In my ActionScript file that I wrote, every time you click on one of those squares, it calls this function, add new color. And essentially it's adding a new square on top of the square that you just clicked on. What makes this kind of an odd kind of case, I put a for loop here going from 0 to 500. So essentially, instead of just adding one square to the top of this movie clip, I'm adding 500 every time I click. And this is going to showcase the performance issue, what's going on. So let's go ahead and I'll show you how to run the Flex Profiler tool. So right now we're inside of my Flash development perspective. If we go up here and run our file as profile, and we click on the ActionScript project that we're on right now, what happens is it's going to open up Safari. So you want to make sure that you have Safari closed before you do this, so it opens up a completely new browser and it gets to run from scratch. And that's one really important thing to remember. So I had Safari closed, I went and did my profiler and I ran it, and I get this screen, which is basically asking us to bind our FlexBuilder to the profiler that's going to be happening on the Safari browser. So it's going to make both of those connect to each other and be able to communicate. So these are the default values, and these are perfectly fine to leave as they are. What you want to do is click resume, and that will then bring us into the Flex Profiler perspective. So you see up here, this is our memory usage tab, which I referred to earlier, and this is going to show, so every second that goes by, it's going to calculate how much memory our application is using. So right now our memory usage is 45 kilobytes here. So it's really small, and it's really irrelevant to any size or any performance. So this application is running really just perfect right now. Now, since Safari is still open, let me go to that real quick. So Profiler tool is running in the background still, and we have this my Flash application inside Safari. So if I go in here and I add some squares over top, and remember that this is adding 500 every time I click, so it's kind of a high memory usage thing. So let me go back to the Flex, and we'll see that exactly here at that time interval where I started clicking, our performance and our memory usage jumped up to this peak at 526 kilobytes. So that was a pretty significant jump right here. So right now we're kind of focusing and we're maintaining this 526. If I go back into Safari and I just start clicking again everywhere, every time I click I'm adding 500 squares to the top of these, which is not a practical thing to do, but for this example it's showcasing how much of the memory is being used. And I go back to Flex, and we see again, right here is where I was discussing earlier, and I started clicking again, and our performance has jumped and peaked really high. So what we want to do is, we know that this application, if it was out on the web and people were clicking on these and it started clicking and they just kept going, and essentially our memory usage would go all the way up to around this 204.80 mark, And essentially when it hits that, I've seen performances, it either will make your application just sit there and spin, or else it will just completely crash. So what we want to do is, we don't like this in the scale what's going on here. We want to make sure that it really never even comes up above this middle line. So this is a really poor example of what's going on with performance, and I'm going to show you a quick way to increase performance in a practical way. So what we do, I usually just quit out of my application in Safari. I'm going to completely close Safari again, like I said, because we're going to run the profiler next time. And up here at the top right, we can go back to my Flex development perspective, and I'm back here in the code. We are adding movie clips upon movie clips, 500 times every time I click. They're essentially not there, they're not visible to the user, but they're still there in memory. So it's our job to remove those that aren't going to be seen. And the quick and most painless way to do this is to remove the child from that movie clip at 0. So when I click on this, there's only ever going to be one movie clip at a time, so it's going to be at the 0 index. So before we add another square to it, we're going to remove all instances of the movie clip and then add it. So this time when we click, there won't be a movie clip stacked on top of another movie clip 500 times. It'll just be a new, fresh movie clip every time we click. So if we look back at our Flex profiler, I'll go back real quick, we see our graph here where it completely went higher and higher as our performance got worse. Now we're going to rerun the profiler tool now that I have this remove child, and this should definitely increase our performance tremendously. So let's go back into run, and I have Safari closed completely, one key point. Let's do the Flex profiler and save. It's going to ask us to connect, and we resume. Alright, so we have our scale and nothing's happening right now currently, so it's just going through and it's currently at 45 again. So when I go back in here to my Swift file and I start clicking, we're adding 500 at a time, but all of the 499 below it essentially are removed and there's only ever one left. So I can click really fast and just keep clicking around, and we'll take another look back here and we'll see that before we were adding this 500 and our scale was going really high up here, and eventually it surpassed this middle line. Whereas now, because we have our garbage collecting going on, we're removing the unwanted movie clips, we have peaks and valleys, I like to call. So right here is our high point, and once we removed them we went back down and we clicked again and went back up, but eventually it always finds its equilibrium where it comes back down to a consistent and normal state. So I'm going to go back to the Safari here and just have fun clicking and just add so many squares and see just what happens. So let's go back to performance, and we'll see that this graph, as compared to our order graph we can see here, is definitely performing way better than the other one. So let's take another look. Let me close out Safari, I did more clicks, and this, okay, so we can compare this screen to this screen, and this essentially is going to show you how we use our profiler tool and the memory usage tab to make a significant increase in the performance of our Flash application that could be out there on the web, people clicking around and causing browsers to crash or the Flex to just hold up and just sit there and not do anything. So by doing some garbage collecting and reviewing our Flex profiler, we've made this application very good with the performance and very well equipped to go on the internet and allow people to use.